All right, going to call this meeting to order. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Palumbi.
Here.
Councilmember Graves.
Here.
Councilmember Saper.
Here.
Councilmember Tall. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Bailey.
Here.
Councilmember Robert.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
All right, then we have the Pledge of Allegiance this evening led by Councilmember Palumbi.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving right along. Approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? No. Motion carries. Number 5, comments from the public. Are there any comments from the public this evening? Seeing none, we'll go on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? No. Motion carries. Number 14.
Item 14, funding agreement analysis conclusions for a proposed Chapter 100 bond for Tanemic Company Incorporated.
Thank you. That is, of course, I brought the wrong file. Kim. Please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. City staff and consultants have completed the due diligence review of the Tanemic Chapter 100 request. Just to provide a quick recap, this site that Tanemic wants to develop is a former ADM mill site south of 23rd Avenue, west of the BNSF tracks, and east of Burlington. The site is approximately 18 acres. The plant and refinery components from the former ADM mill were shuttered in 2003, and the structures were raised by 2011. This site has sat vacant since 2011. Tanemic is proposing a new development consisting of a 300,000-plus square foot Class A industrial facility that will be connected to the current Tanemic manufacturing building located at 123 West 23rd Avenue. We have 2 presenters this evening that will provide some input on their due diligence review of the request.
I should have started with cell phones.
The Chapter 100 financial review will be performed by Matt Webster. Matt will address any of the questions relating to the city's economic development policy and how Tanemic's project fits into that policy. We are also joined by Doug Cheek of Burns & McDonnell, who will deliver a report on the environmental review of the site. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have from any of our presenters. We also have representatives from Tanemic and Van Trust in the audience this evening, and if you have any questions for them, they would be happy to answer them. We want to make sure that we are addressing all of your questions or concerns about this Chapter 100 request. After the presentations, we would ask that the City Council provide staff with direction on this Chapter 100 request. Should the City Council proceed with this Chapter 100 request, staff would finalize the Chapter 100 plan and send it to the taxing jurisdictions for their review. After the review, the plan could be back before the City Council as soon as July 5th for final consideration. As noted in the Burns & Mack memo, Tanemic is working with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources to prepare a remedial work plan that will outline activities to be conducted during the development of the property. The plan will address the ammonia on the site, as well as potential lead and asbestos issues that may arise during construction. Staff would work with Burns & Mack, the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and the Tanemic Van Trust team on an agreement to outline permitting requirements to address any concerns that may arise during and after construction. Should the City Council deny the Chapter 100 request, staff has been told that the project would not proceed as it wouldn't be economically feasible on this site due to the environmental concerns. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Matt Webster, the city's financial advisor.
I got him. Now try. Now you should be on.
Hello? Okay.
There we go.
That's better. Okay. Again, Matt Webster with Stifel. Good evening, everybody. So the last time I spoke to you was March 1st, when most of the presentation was taken up by Tnemec and Van Trust. And since March 1st, we've reviewed the information that they provided us, as well as requested additional information, and then carefully reviewed that. So I'll give my presentation relating to the numbers, and then Burns and McDonnell will talk about the environmental issues, and then ultimately you just need to indicate what you would like us all to do next. So I have slides tonight, and it looks like Kim's got the first slide up there. I'll go through these slides briefly. Some of them summarize what was in my memo that was provided as part of the package for tonight, and I'm sure that you've seen that. So I don't want to spend a lot of time going over things that you could read, but I'm happy to answer questions. And then also there's some follow-on information in this slide deck that I think is helpful. So I've already sort of given the update. The project summary, again, I think I just tried to put the highlights on here. Tnemec is a big company. They've been in North Kansas City since 1950. They've been in business for more than 100 years. And they have a fairly sizable payroll, which is additive to the city's economics as well. I didn't quantify it all, but they do pay substantial sales taxes from the sale of their materials, and many of those sales taxes are collected by the city as well as the state and county. And they pay substantial property taxes on the property that they own that is not abated. So all those are important to remember. As they indicated before, they're out of space. The 310,000 square feet, 100,000 of which will be used by them initially, is intended to sort of realign their manufacturing, bring it up to modern standards, and also provide additional space. I think also, as they said last time, it wasn't economic for them just to build 100,000 feet. That's why they've chosen to do 300,000 feet. And given the cost of these types of projects, I think that's a reasonable approach. This would be a new industrial space and an upgrade to the industrial inventory in North Kansas City. I don't think that there is any space this modern or with these particular elements. So it is exceptional in that regard. Many of the costs are associated with both environmental and then the site conditions, and I've noted a couple of them here: stormwater detention, city-required green space, attaching the new facility to their current facility, and then mitigating some environmental issues that are left over from prior development previous to the ownership of Tnemec. Next slide, please, Kim. Oh, shoot, sorry about that. This is just a sort of a recap of the site, kind of a Google image, and you can see what's there now, which is sort of a demolished industrial site. Next slide, please. This is the layout that they provided. I think you've seen this before, but I just wanted to briefly show it again. There on the west side is the green space and the detention facility for runoff, which is helpful to the city's drainage issues. Next slide. And then finally, the image of what it looks like, and you can see it's a big building, but the dock space and parking for trailers and so forth is on the west side, so obviously that screens it from Burlington. Next slide. Okay, so the financial review, the sort of heart of this. It's a large site, and it yields about $67,000 a year right now in property taxes, which is just as the land value. And I think it's highly likely that if the site remains undeveloped, that will decline over time, and it may decline substantially. The requested abatement, 83% for years 1 through 10, and then 44% for years 11 through 15. And this was provided by Tnemec based on on what they felt their needs were, and then we reviewed what their request is. So you can see the abatement value. And I think the key thing to point out here is that the city's economic development policy allows up to 25 years of abatement. So I believe it is very much in the city's interest to have shorter abatements. So a 15-year abatement, I think is far more palatable than a 20 or 25-year abatement, because it puts the property back on the tax rolls sooner rather than later, and then the value is reassessed at that time, and generally that's a benefit to everybody. And although they have asked for more than the maximum allowed by the policy, which is 75% for the first 10 years, and then in the 30% range for the following years. By shortening this, it balances out. And so what the policy says is with an extraordinary situation, you are allowed to come before the council and ask for a deviation from the policy. And so then the question becomes, what is exceptional about this? And I'll get into that in a moment. If you do no development, that $66,874 for 25 years totals up to $1.67 million. As I said, I think it would be more likely to decline rather than stay static. And so then we look at what the benefit is to the taxing jurisdictions. I haven't used present value numbers here, but I think it's still a substantial amount of money that's coming to the taxing jurisdictions over the 25-year horizon. Finally, the last element of the abatement is the tax exemption on construction materials. And this is something that's part of state law and has been common to the Chapter 100s that we've done before here in the city. And I want to point out that this is not an economic loss to the city, because the sales taxes normally wouldn't be collected in the city. So when you have the tax exemption certificate, you can in fact take it to places like Kansas, and typically you can get exemption on the materials from other jurisdictions. And there aren't a lot of large purveyors of construction materials within the city. So it has real value to them. It doesn't cost the city anything necessarily, and it's important for these construction projects. We estimate that approximately there's $10 million on this $30 million project would be construction materials. So that's a benefit. Next slide, please. Construction, about $31.6 million. Additional land value, about $2.4 million. That's just the county value. So you're looking at a $34 million project. I have present value of the incentives here just to give you sort of a trying to compare apples to apples, and that's $3.7 million. One of the things we look at under the city's policy is, well, how much of the project is incentivized? And we have a limit on the upper end of 33%. This project is asking for incentives that are approximately 11% of the project cost. So I would say that was on the low to moderate end, which obviously is a benefit, and suggests that they're not over incentivizing their project. Also, we requested from Tnemec and Ventrust what we call the extraordinary development costs, and so these would be the costs that would justify deviation from the city's policy, and this is what they provided to us. And the reason I used the present value of the incentives up here at the top of the page is you can see that on the low end we're sort of right at that $3.7 million, and on the high end, we don't come close to recouping it all. I think what I want to emphasize here is the reason we have incentive policies in a city like North Kansas City, or many cities for that matter, is to equalize costs. And so if you go out to a farm field out in the county, any county really, on either side of the state line, you wouldn't have these costs. And in order to keep property on the tax rolls, this property was originally developed by the Kansas flour mill 100 years ago. So I think 1920, so more than 100 years ago. And without these sort of incentives, it becomes impossible to put property back on the tax rolls for another 100 years. And all you have to do is go around to what I'll call the abandoned industrial areas, not so much in this city, but certainly in the cities that surround us. And you can see what looked really good, 75 or 80 years ago, and maybe even looked good in 1950 or 1960 is now just desolate and undeveloped because they couldn't figure out a way to put it back into service. And the willingness of a company like Tnemec and Ventrust to reinvest, and then the willingness of the city to entertain the incentives, are an important part of that process. Next slide, please. So I'll get into the analysis. I've already spoken about what I believe is the significance of a shorter abatement, and typically these are favored by the school district as well. It's just a positive thing. I've mentioned also the extraordinary qualifications. I believe that they have demonstrated the extraordinary qualifications. I do want to point out that my judgment in that regard is not binding on you or anybody else in any respect. It's up to the council to make that decision. And so I offer you the information, and if you request more, we can certainly get it. We also have a but-for test, which means but for the incentive, would you do the deal? We've certainly had developers come to us and say, hey, I'm doing something, can you give me an incentive? And the response is, well, if you're doing it, why do you need the incentive? And so most people get this, and most responsible members of the business community don't come before the council or any other governmental body and ask for incentives that they don't need. And I believe that the but-for test in this case has been met, and I'll explain why. So one of the best ways to look at but-for is, without the project, what would you do? And I believe that Tnemec is already on the record that if they can't get this project done and they believe they need the incentives to get it done, then their future in North Kansas City could be in question because they can't expand, and it's not economic to build new things. So that's one element. The other element is, well, if you built this without the incentives, what would it look like? And we look at the internal rate of return, which is a measure of economic return for an investment. And I've looked at their pro formas, I've looked at other pro formas, and they have demonstrated that without the incentives, the rate of return would not be enough for any reasonable investor to put their money into this. And that's a function of competition in the market. The industrial market in Kansas City is a nationally prominent market. There's lots of building here. It's a good thing. But it means that with the spec inventory that's being constructed around the city, there are many choices for any prospective tenant, and that means that whatever you build has to meet the market. And so it's a competitive market, and they need to be able to charge rent to people to make it work. And I believe they have done that. The other element of the but-for is, again, something I've already mentioned, 11% of the project versus a 33% cap. So that's a favorable comparison. And then we also look at sort of the amount of the abatement. And although the amount of the abatement is above what is called out in the city's policy, it is actually below abatement for what I'll call pure projects. So if you go to the City of Independence or Liberty or other cities around this area and you look at the amounts of abatement they've given, this compares very favorably. It's much lower than the amounts of abatement other political subdivisions have offered. So they are not, in my view, being unreasonable in their request because, again, we look at these things in comparison to what's out there in the market. And then finally, and again, this sort of bleeds over into what you're going to be hearing next, the project calls for mitigation of some environmental issues, and that is a public good, and that is part of the analysis. Why do you do economic development because it meets some public good, and certainly getting rid of some environmental problems is a reason to move forward on something like that. And finally, and again, I mentioned this before, but I'll reiterate it, absent the project, it's unlikely that the site would stay, where it is. It would likely decline in value, and then, ultimately, you might get another project. It's hard to conceive of a scenario where waiting is, in any respect, positive for the city. It's been off the tax rolls for more than 20 years, and that's a bad thing. So if you have a project and you can get the project done and you're accepting of the request, I'd say there's no reason to hope for something better. Next slide, please. So finally, just to reiterate what Kim said, you'll hear the environmental discussion. If you're accepting of what Tnemec has asked for, we'll notice the plan, and we will come back before, again, if you decide to move forward tonight, we will come back before the city council after we have spoken to the school district and tell you if they have an objection or if they have something that they want to change. We don't do that until the city council, takes action to give their nod to the project. So that is part of the process. We're not skipping over that. And you would have that information before you approved a Chapter 100 plan. And then after the Chapter 100 plan is approved, then the developer will get busy with their implementation of that plan and then ultimately come back to you for the issuance of Chapter 100 bonds. And with regard to Chapter 100 bonds, I just want to remind everybody that they carry no financial risk for the city. They are the tool that creates the tax abatement, but the city is indemnified, the city is held harmless and protected through the Chapter 100 process. We would explain all that again before those documents were brought back to you. But I'd like to put that on the record because the city has no financial risk on this deal. That is an important part of the city's economic development policy is the city only puts themselves at risk under extraordinary circumstances, and this is not such a circumstance. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or talk about anything that I may have forgotten or expand on anything that I may have mentioned.
No, I think we'll keep it going on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I'd like to call upon Doug Cheek from Burns & McDonnell to present his presentation.
Thank you, Kim. Mayor, council people. My name is Doug Cheek. I'm an environmental consultant for the city. The scope that Burns & McDonnell had was to review the environmental data for the property north of the city water treatment plant, rather, and give a review of that data and a summary of that. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of that. Some of this information is repeated. I apologize for that. But the property was a former ADM plant. It served as a flour mill. It has also served as a fertilizer plant. And most recently, prior to the demolition, it was a soybean oil extraction processing facility. And during that time, there were several releases of the soybean oil. So that's important environmentally. Next slide. There have been numerous environmental site assessments that have been performed on this property. Those site assessments include both surface soil, which is 0 to 3 foot, subsurface soil, which would be anything greater than the 3 foot, and water sampling, groundwater samples. So those were done as well. One of the investigations that's not on here that I will note to you is that the city of North Kansas City actually performed an assessment in 1999, Lane-Duden assessment, as a result of some ammonia that you were seeing in one of your wells at the water treatment plant. So that goes into some of this review. Next slide. So what does all that mean? All these samples were collected. What does that mean to the city? Well, the analysis that SCS engineers did a great job of putting together a full packet, and we've attached that to our review as well, of the data, and we've looked at all those reports, and all the analytical data. And what it means is that there have been some detections of petroleum hydrocarbons in the soils. There have been some detections of organic compounds in the soils and the groundwater. And then there has been ammonia in the soil and groundwater. Of those constituents that have been detected, only ammonia constituent exceeds what the Missouri Department of Natural Resource consider a risk. And by that I mean they've set up, the Department of Natural Resources sets up some criteria for you to take those analytical results, compare them to what you have and say, is there a risk to human health? And so at this site, that the only contaminant of concern is this ammonia. And so there are some other potential impacts with any kind of construction site. Those are typically lead-based paint and asbestos. I just add those as a potential. That's something that you always look at when you're constructing. Next slide, please. So when I put this together, it was really easy to see all this, and it's not so much anymore. But this is included in the packet that we provided to you on our report. But these two figures show the concentrations of ammonia in both the surface soil, again 0 to 3 foot, and the deep soil. And so you can kind of see that on the west side of the property, there's a pretty good, the smaller the circle, the bigger the concentration. So I think 1,000 milligrams per kilogram roughly in the surface and subsurface on that western side. That's in the soil. That is the cause of any groundwater contamination for ammonia. So how that works is the water infiltrates through that soil, carries that ammonia down to the groundwater. Groundwater at this area is influenced by the Missouri River, of course. Shallow groundwater starts at about 35, 40 feet. To give you a little perspective, the city water well is about 100 foot deep. Okay, the next slide. This shows you this is why it's important to the city. This is the groundwater contours, and this is the ammonia in the groundwater. And so you can see that it kind of pulls down towards the south and to the east, and that blue dot in the far north, that is the city water number 1. I believe that's right. And ammonia in that is that's the reason for the water treatment plant development. So the construction that you're currently doing is because of that particular issue. So that's why work is being done for your plant. Next slide. So what does that mean for the current city? So if nothing was done today and no construction was done, the concentrations in the soil would still stay the same. There's still going to be potential for migration of that ammonia through the aquifer down to the deeper aquifer and to the city well. The concentrations probably, well, I can't say for certain that they won't increase, but they shouldn't. The source is still there. There's no additional source that's coming. But that's what would happen if nothing was done with the site. What TNEMIC has done is they have entered the voluntary cleanup program with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. They're working with them to come up with a remedial design, and by that, there's some way that they can remediate this site. And so by building this construction on top of that and building the feature on the western side, they're effectively capping the source. So but by that I mean to keep the water from getting to this source of ammonia, they're going to put a cover on top of it. If you were similar to our landfill, except they're doing a little bit more extensive. They're going to have pavement, they've got concrete, they've got a fill. So they're basically keeping that water, mitigating that water from going through the source and then into the groundwater. And this will reduce the risk to future impact to the well. This is now strictly just the source from this site. There could be, and there probably is, other sources of ammonia north of the property, but the bulk of the contamination will be covered by this particular cap. So we recommend that the city continue to work with TNEMIC on this site as a stakeholder for this property because of the impact that it because of the impact that it has had on the city water treatment plant already. We recommend that the city be involved in some of the MDNR meetings so that they have, they can hear what the plans are and be able to voice that back to the city council. And then we also recommend that during the construction, the city be involved in some periodic observations, just for, because you're a stakeholder in this site. So I'll ask for any questions.
All right. Any questions on this portion? No questions.
Thank you.
All right, now we're just back to open session here.
We are, like I said
Fantastic.
before, what we were looking for at the staff level at least is some direction on what you would like to do with this Chapter 100 request.
So I'm going to ask one question. So it looks like there's some additional dollars set aside for brownfield cleanup. Would any of this potentially qualify for grant dollars to clean up the site? I don't know who would be able to answer that amongst this whole room of people.
I hate to call on our friends from Tnemec or Van Trust, but are you in a position to be able to answer that particular question?
Hello.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. David Rezak with Van Trust Real Estate. We did pursue or looked at the potential of pursuing brownfield tax credits. And after many conversations, we decided that that wasn't going to be something that this particular project would benefit from.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Smith.
All right, thank you. So I got a few thoughts on this one. First off, I'd like to just point out that Tnemec is a valuable employer in the city. Been here a long time. It's 101 years now. Very good. Operated a long time, put a lot of people to work, done good things there. The incentive, as Matt pointed out, they're asking for 83 and 44, so 83 for 10, 44 for 5. That's outside of our policy maximum. However, I reached out to Matt and had him run a net present value analysis, and if you're not a finance nerd like me, that means just holding all things equal for today's dollars. So comparing the value of the incentive over 25 years at the maximum we would allow and at their request. So the maximum incentive, if we were to approve something at our policy max, the net benefit to us is $1.5 million, roughly. Approving this incentive, the net benefit to us on long-term tax revenue is $1.7 million. So it's actually under our max amount, despite being a higher percentage. So it does slide under the policy numbers. Third thing I'll point out is the present value of the request, as Matt showed on his slide, is roughly equal to the low end of the extraordinary cost. So they're not asking for the moon here. It's very justifiable to the extraordinary site costs. They got to do a lot of cleanup, which dovetails into the public benefit of capping the site. So if they're going to cap an ammonia-heavy site right next to our water well, that's a pretty immense public benefit. The water will hopefully stop filtering down and heading into our drinking water. On top of that, you have the economic benefits of jobs, potential expansion for Tnemec. Their operations will become much more streamlined, no driving trucks across an alleyway and extra bills of lading. I would encourage anybody, if you haven't been, go check out the site. Chase puts on a great tour. They've got some pretty cool paint mixing stuff, but if you go over there and see, right now they're having to drive trucks of raw material over to finish it and then back across to store it. It's tough. This would stop all that. And it would allow us to retain a very important local employer. And then long-term, this will be positive for the tax roll. So we got a vacant property right now. It's got environmental concerns, tough to build on, landlocked. I mean, it sits behind a car wash and butts up to railroad tracks. Access is only on 26th, is it right now, ingress and egress. So it's not a property that would be of much interest to somebody else. So I think this makes a ton of sense for us to move forward on the Chapter 100. That's my piece.
Just note, we don't always have to max out incentives either. I understand the comparison, but my question is going to be on the 2/3 of the site. So this will probably be for Tnemec, the 2/3 that you're not directly using right now. When would you anticipate operating in those sites as Tnemec instead of leasing those sites out?
Thank
Good
you,
evening.
Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I'm Chase Bean, President, CEO of Tnemec Company. Maybe a little bit of history will help with that, Mayor. We attempted twice since acquiring the property in 2008 to develop a warehouse for our own use, and we could not find the economic justification to do so. It's very difficult, and it wasn't until we started working with Van Trust that we learned of ways to do it to make it economically sensible, and that does include having 2/3 more space than we actually need initially. What we intend to do is bring new employers, a new 1 or 2 tenants to that space, so that we can expand further employment in the community and also help us cover the costs of building this facility. Our growth eventually will, force us into that space. So far this year, we're up substantially. Last year was a big year for us as well. Unfortunately, our site here in North Kansas City does not allow for expansion as things go now. We have facilities in Baltimore, outside of Dallas, 2 locations in Florida that have enabled us to absorb some of that growth. But our home is here in North Kansas City, and we'd like to make sure that we have that expansion room.
Okay. And just some of the economics, you anticipate this will generate additional sales tax as a result of this expansion? Okay. Additional jobs?
Yes, we do, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Any idea how many or any sort of figures?
I think the earlier justification was around 50 for Tnemec, but I'm going from memory.
Okay, that I'm not going to hold you to it.
Yeah, okay.
Just looking for some rough.
Yeah.
Someone else has any questions, you can go ahead while I continue.
I would add to the site piece, so the 1/3, 2/3, I actually asked this question as well. If they were only to theoretically develop the 1/3 that is closest to their location, it would have no effect on capping the ammonia spot. So if they're going to go through the extraordinary expense of developing the site to start with, it only makes sense to build out the other 2/3 to, remediate the environmental concern.
Okay. Go ahead. Councilmember Bailey.
And maybe I missed it. Did you have an estimation on when you hope to expand to the full 300,000 square feet?
I wouldn't give a time frame yet on when Tnemec would expand into that space, but we hope that there will be new employers in that space, new companies moving to North Kansas City. But eventually, we foresee that need without a doubt.
And then I had one other question. If not for the ammonia cost, the cost of remediation, do you believe you would have, this is suppositional, of course, do you think you'd be asking for a tax abatement?
I think we would still need to. Simply based on our past experience of trying to build it on our own, we're really pretty good at making paints and coatings, but we're awful at building buildings. And so having that expertise helped us chart this way forward to understand how to afford it. Thank you.
Okay, one second. I was hoping there's more questions, so I continue to. Go ahead, there we go. Councilmember Clark.
I guess just knowing that the environmental impacts, I guess, that were imposed from the Kansas flour mill 100+ years ago. And I know I read that, the Missouri Department is involved in the building process for this particular project. I'm just wondering, have we weighed out all the environmental concerns for potential processing, or who might occupy that 2/3 space, or things like that, like where we can kind of mitigate this repeating of possible toxins and things like that? I know you mentioned that you'll be storing paint in this area, so planning that there'll be no spills and things like that, but that's my only question.
And I would say maybe the fair way of answering that is that the modern day of operating a paint and coatings facility is quite a bit different. But anyone who moves into that space will be required to have safe manufacturing operations. Whatever distribution is there would have containment controls and the whole works, without a doubt.
No, overall, I know I had some questions. Overall, I appreciate this, appreciate the ammonia cleanup. I think there's a strong community benefit, as noted, for the city and especially our primary water source there. So I think that's good. Overall, the The only other concern I saw in the numbers was initially looking at the first 10 years at least where the property tax generated is essentially flat to kind of what it is now. Do we anticipate, I guess more question for the city, any sort of response, any sort of city services needed for a facility like this?
No, about a year ago, and I'm looking at Director Sands as I'm trying to make sure that my memory and recall is correct. One of the things that we were already doing is looking at one of the water mains that actually supplies the other side of Tnemic's property. That is an aged pipe, and over the many years, it is not meeting the needs of Tnemic nor any of the other businesses that are along that line. So that is already underway. It was actually approved, I believe, in our current fiscal year for that water line replacement. And we were looking at upsizing it just for future development, which happens to be one of the things we're discussing today.
Thank you. I have a few more, but I can reach out to you offline on those. Any further questions at the moment? No further questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we need directive on that?
I do. I was just about ready to say, would the city council ask staff to pursue finalizing the Chapter 100 plan and bring it forward for final consideration?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Can I get a
Do you
motion?
need an official
Yeah.
motion?
I'd move to ask staff to pursue the Chapter 100 plan.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, and thank you. Now I expect half the chamber is going to clear. You guys don't want to stick around? We got a few more items here. Number 16, feasibility study for no, we're on
no.
15. We're on 15. That's why I got to leave this to the clerk. Go ahead, please.
Item 15, Multi-County Regional Bike Pedestrian Highway Barrier Removal Project, Missouri River Trail Connector.
There we go. Shoot.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, is the mic working? This is my first presentation in front of you. Bear with me for a moment. I know this name is super long, super complicated, and looks very fancy. It is truly a multi-county regional bike and pedestrian trail, and it will cross Kansas City, Missouri, and the city of Kansas City, Missouri has been in touch with us for a while, and we will connect through the Riverside, Missouri, eventually connect to North Kansas City for this project. As you see on this map, the orange line showing on this map in the center is the proposed study corridors that will be dedicated for regional bike and pedestrian uses. We anticipate it to be a multi-use path that will bear the pedestrian and the cyclists to use, as I mentioned earlier. So in this project, we are seeking a PSP grant, which stands for Planning Sustainable Places. It is a grant administered by MARC, the Mid-American Regional Council. I know most of you have the experience with them. So they do require a contribution from the applicants. In this case, the applicants will be a partnership between North Kansas City, Missouri, and Riverside, Missouri. And we committed to contribute $25,000, so does Riverside, Missouri, and Kansas City will contribute $50,000 for a regional study, including a feasibility study and a corridor path options for this multi-use trail. And the rest of the cost will be covered by the grant if we get awarded. So staff is needing a little direction from you, whether or not we should participate in this partnership with the county, with the cities, to pursue this study for a trail connection from Kansas City, Missouri, Riverside, Missouri, and through our 32nd Avenue, and all the way through Macomb Park, and which will eventually connect to River Forest Park and continue going to the east, tied up to Armour Road and across Armour Road, which is Missouri Highway 210, and eventually go through Birmingham and end up in Choteau. So this is the ideal route that staff would propose. And during the study, we might find different routes through the feasibility study. But I would ask your direction on approving this budget item for $25,000 for the city's contribution.
There we go. I'd say yes. Now, if you look at important regional connections here, certainly the Northwest Connection's one that we have struggles with, as they effectively call the bridge of death over there. I know Wes Minder's been really behind and trying to push that for years, and I've tried to support that grant that Kansas City's put in every year.
Right.
So I appreciate seeing a regional collaboration here, and it also tackles the east-west, one of our
Yes,
east-west.
that's why it's
So
also called barrier removal.
Yes.
It has a lot of name for it.
There's, and it's doing a lot of barrier removal, so appreciate that. Further comments?
Let's do it.
Councilmember Graves.
Yeah, I had a bunch of questions when I was looking at this. I'm appreciative that you brought a map, because I couldn't, like, on the agenda, I didn't see one. And I'm just trying to piece together, so this is just kind of like a very broad, general outline. There's not really like a specific route.
That's correct.
And-
The specific route will be identified through the study.
So the $25,000 contribution, is that for the study? Or
Yes.
is- Okay,
That grant can only be used for planning purposes.
okay. So we pay that upfront, and then the planning begins?
So normally, the way it works is you initiate the planning strategies first, and through the planning process, you identify what the routes would be. Of course, that will include public engagement and stakeholders' opinions, and then you bring that forward. If you want to move forward with construction, then you can budget out what construction costs would that be, and a lot of projects that might be available for other grants through the federal state dollars. So the PSP grant usually only covers the very first step.
Okay. So we aren't sure if there's costs moving forward after the planning stage? We have no idea what obviously.
That will depend on what the study will recommend.
Gotcha.
And then later on, you can see, oh, this might be the cost and this is the route. Do we want to pursue? And of course, at that time, staff will ask for your direction again.
Okay. Yeah, just some general thoughts. As we all know, bicycle lanes are, a hot topic, very contentious, and, thinking about putting bicycle lanes on, 9 Highway, and there's other areas on here that I'm just trying to think, like, is that going to restrict traffic like it did Armour Road? Or are there going to be more of these delineators that people get all angry over? So I'm just curious about that. And then something else that you put on here was I thought I saw something on here about levies. If you click on the hyperlink on your memorandum, recreational use on the levy. And I've kind of reached out to the levy district, and I've been told that that's like a non-starter, like they don't want anyone on top of the levy.
So this topic will be covered a little bit more in the next agenda item, but you're correct. Currently, this route does show a portion of the proposed trail might be going on top or adjacent to the levee. And this is another direction we might need from you. Like I mentioned earlier, the next agenda item, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But staff has been in contact with the levee district. They're not opposing to looking at any options or studies that if we've done one, and then to staff's opinion, staff sends an opportunity for a conversation according to the feasibility study if we have one.
I was going to bring this up on the next agenda item, but I'll just bring it up now, I guess, since we're on the topic. But I think that before we move forward on projects like this, especially the next agenda item, which is $250,000 cost, I think we should have an actual sit-down, like a work session or some type of a planning session with people from the levee district and see what options are feasible before we spend that kind of money on these studies, because I'm under the impression that there's certain things that people think are options that are really not options. Like, I don't think we're going to be able to, unfortunately, put a bicycle trail on top of the levee without serious pushback from the levee district. And here in North Kansas City, I was around in the 90s when we were underwater, and the levee's extremely important. I respect the levee district. If they don't want trails on top of the levee, then I don't think we should entertain that. I'm not exactly opposed to this. I'm just kind of confused as to, it's like so vague that I I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts.
I'll say during the bike master plan process, one of the representatives for the levy district was definitely more open to the northern levy, the hillside levy, the hillside levy. But as you saw in their levy district presentation, he also said just no one's presented anything yet. So there really hasn't been any solid plan presented for either levy at this point, which I think is part of the thinking of actually starting to put together a real plan that we could take to them to discuss. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, in that vein, that's been kind of the consistent pushback that we heard at the levy presentation as well, is that nobody has presented us a formal plan. It's been like, hey, it'd be nice to have bikes on the levy, and then they say, well, what would that look like? Show it to us. They've also said no because of riprap and erosion and all these things, but a study would formalize that and say, will this truly erode? Could there be ways to mitigate danger? Those kind of things, and we haven't done it, so we haven't, and that bridges into the next one as well, but this one, jumping on board with Riverside and Kansas City, cost sharing and then getting a grant seems like a great way forward. And if there's an opening now, let's take the opportunity.
Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I've had many community members reach out about what are the plans, what can we do, and I think this is that step to find out. We can talk about it a lot as community members, but we're not the experts. We can impose our opinions and say, sure, it'd be nice. But I think that has to be the step is to, and both of them call out Richard Laningham saying, like, if you bring me a plan, I need to see a plan before I'm going to have a further discussion beyond interest. So I just think this is the next step to kind of show which direction we're able to go. So I would move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second. I'll just say, applications like this usually do pretty good. These collaborative projects where you multi-jurisdiction, multi-city, multi-county, and I appreciate you bringing this forward, and we have Councilmember Saker.
Yeah, I support this plan for that reason, to actually find out, we can then find out just how usable, if they are at all, the levies. And by doing that, we can sort of actually table the next item on the agenda, because otherwise we'd be sort of putting $250,000 down a sort of a black hole. We don't know what's going to come out because of the many objections that the levy district, in my opinion, has valid reasons for opposing development along the levee that would compromise its integrity in any way. And the current item we're discussing, though it deals with the hillside levee, would give us some insight as to whether there's really anything even possible to build on those levees or use those levees for recreational purposes that wouldn't impact them and make them a danger to all of us here. So I support the current one, but I am opposed to the next item for that reason.
All right. Councilmember Graves.
I guess just for clarification purposes, so people kind of know where I'm coming from. I've had conversations that you guys haven't had with the levy district that I've been told under no uncertain terms that they do not want any activity on top of the levee. And so with that being said, I'm not against bicycle lanes, but I am against just throwing away money. And I would prefer kind of setting this aside for the moment to see if we can have more communication with the levy district and come up with, I guess, some more of a baked plan than this is very vague. And especially as Saper just mentioned, the next item, is a $250,000 cost. And I would hate to just throw money at projects that are dead ends to nowhere. And so I just think we should, watch how we spend money, make sure that we're doing things responsibly in respect to the levy, keep people involved that are, I guess they haven't been consulted to the extent that I think they should have been included in this project before we move forward. So I'm not really against it. I guess I am against it unless we engage them prior to proceeding, if that makes sense.
All right, so we got a couple different items here. I'll go ahead and ask a question about number 16 since we keep throwing number 16 in here real quick. The $250,000, that's the total study, but that's not necessarily our match, or is that our match?
Okay.
Sorry. I was just looking for a number just to answer that portion on
That's
the
okay.
250.
If you may, let me ask our city clerk a question. Do we need to read item number 16 before I move forward on the merits?
Do we need to
Well, we
vote?
do have a motion and a
Yeah, we
second
got
on
a
the
motion.
table right now.
Yeah.
Let's
So we
vote
can,
15.
but we brought that one up, so, okay.
Okay, I do.
Well, let's
wanna-
clarify 15 then. Okay, let's get 15 done here. We do have a motion and a second. Further comment? Councilmember Palumbi, right? I don't know.
Yes.
Someone- There we go.
It doesn't look at us. I do get where Councilmember Graves is coming from, in the sense that I too wouldn't want to waste money on something if it is going to be a dead end. So from my understanding from what Shu has noted is the levy district is knowledgeable of the plans that not only us but Riverside and the other counties want to look into. Otherwise, I don't know that they would propose something that would yield to a dead end. I think that's what she's kind of alluding to, as opposed to us just putting together this study and looking at its feasibility, knowing that we cannot build anything there. So I do think there has been obviously some discussion with the levy district. I would also agree with Councilmember Graves in the terms of, I don't want to upset the levy district either. But I also do think that based on kind of the direction that staff is giving us, is they're not completely closed to the idea. Because I do think if they were closed to the idea, we wouldn't be even having this discussion.
Councilmember Graves.
Levy district, and this is my understanding, is not close to the idea. But let me try to, I don't know, I'll try to phrase this a different way. We think that there are this many options, when really after you talk to the levy district, there's this many options. If that makes sense. Like, there's things that the public, like if you engage the public, for example, and you're like, where do you want trails? They might come up with things that are desirable to them that are not feasible options. And so, in reality, I would like to engage with the levy district beforehand, before moving forward, and say, what is acceptable, what's not acceptable around levies, so then we can come back with a more refined vision of what this is, and not just some like vague drawings.
Let me step back on this real quick. They would be a stakeholder in any sort of study
Yes.
that we did, correct?
If
They would be a
you
part
would-
of the process.
If you would allow me
Okay.
to respond to that comment that Councilmember Graves had, staff has already engaged with levy district. And we had a response from the levy district, Richard Lanning, mentioned if the council member have the intention to move forward to explore a feasibility study of these levies, we would have a scheduled meeting with staff to discuss the details for the options. And so staff has been kept in mind that they will be a key stakeholder, and which they are, because it's literally on their property in their district. And so we would not leave them out of this planning process. In fact, they're the most important key player in this project. And they do have a lot of data that they're willing to share with staff as well, which I will get to the detail of the second item. I know I put it down for $250,000 for that item, but after a conversation with Levitt District, there are actually some of those work which might have already been done by Levitt District, so the budget might being shrank to, so the budget might, actually number might come down than what I have proposed initially, if that makes sense to you all.
All right. Councilmember Graves.
Can we talk to them first and then do this?
Well,
Like, table
you've already
this?
talked to the.
Yes, I've already talked to Richard Lanning from Levitt District, and he said very clearly to me, if the city, because I told him these two items are budget items, I'm putting in the budget, and to show that we are serious about this study and we want to explore the option for recreational trails in the Levitt District. And he said, yes, when the city council agrees on moving forward, we'll sit together and look at the details. And he also did mention to me that they don't feel comfortable with the trails being placed on top of the levee, but they are very willing to look at options for trails being placed between the toe of the levee to the riverside, which there will be really a lot of space for us to explore. So I totally agree with Councilmember Graves that what we thought might be the option might not be an option for Levitt District, and this is why they've been engaged from the beginning to start with. And if you have different directions or different questions, I'm willing to answer as well.
You jump over to Councilmember Roberts real quick, and if you have more, we'll go.
I think she just answered almost everything, but I think the point of this is, it sounds like they're open to anything we want to explore, and we can't move forward without this exploration happening. So we have to do the feasibility study to even go further from this point. They've gone as far with the levy district as possible. And this is very generic, but this is as what you can get with proposals. So I think we've already have, can we go ahead and move forward and vote on this? So we can turn it up or turn it down.
If there's the proper motion, we still have
Now
council
we
member
have a
comments.
motion here.
You have a motion and a second, but debate's still open.
All right.
Did you have something else?
That was actually the exact same conversation I had, so I'm glad that she just made that public, because she did a good job of explaining that essentially I was told the same thing, like, you cannot put trails on top of the levee. You can put trails on the, like, at the base of the levee perhaps, depending on, you know, how it's done, things like that. So one thing that scares me is sometimes public, as we know, sometimes the public runs away, like gets an idea in their head. And if people hear levee trails, these are not, I don't think that's going to take place. I don't think we're getting trails on the levee. And I'm all for developing the riverfront. I go to the park at Argosy Casino quite frequently. There's a little park across the river off of Shoto where there's a boat ramp, and I go hiking in the woods around there. I would love to see us develop the riverfront, but I don't think we're going to get trails on top of the levee from what I'm told. So I guess that's it. I just don't want to waste money on a study and tell people we're getting levee trails when we're not.
Further, Councilmember Saper.
Yeah, I'm a proponent of incrementalism in the sense that item number 15 would give us a lot of insight into what is possible using the levees. And in some ways, it's possible that that levee is a little less critical in some ways to use than the main stem Missouri River levees that number 16 deals with. And I would like to see us go ahead with item number 15, but then really pause when we get to the next item, number 16, and wait. You know, what, 6 months or so? How long? Excuse me. How long do you think?
I think it's an annual period for these planning sustainable places grants.
Yeah. Okay. 6 months to a year from now, because these are long-term projects. And 6 months from a year from now, we would have that information, maybe earlier than the one-year period. Actually, have enough information to know whether we really should go ahead with spending $250,000 on item 16, which follows. So again, I support this item 15.
All right, further council member comments? Seeing none, there's first and second, all in favor of, do we know the motion? Everyone good on the motion?
Yep.
Okay, there we go. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? No. Motion carries. Number 16.
All right. Item 16, feasibility study for recreation trail on levee, planning sustainable places grant.
Shu.
Yep, it's me again. So this map as I'm showing, it is not as fancy as the one you saw earlier. This neon blue color and maybe extended to all the way to Harris is what the feasibility study is pursuing. And this levee, I have to say, is really different from the hillside levee of its own nature. So there are a lot of riverbanks, and it is they are protecting a lot of industrial properties. I initially put down $250,000 over there. With the cost in mind, there will be three big components. First is the grant for a planning purpose, which will include the public engagement and a study being delivered eventually. And there will also be like evaluation of this levee as well as a topo survey. So the evaluation and topo survey themselves, I estimated after doing some research, each of the item might take about $100,000. And if you question why this item is so expensive, that's why. And after I had a conversation with the levee district, I was told there were a lot of data that's already available. So we might be able to save those money for those $200 at this point for this project. And again, this is a budget item request, and keep in mind right now there is no grant has been counted toward this property, and I apologize for the confusion on the title. There is no Planning Sustainable Places grant will be pursued for this levy. So staff need a little direction from you guys, and I believe I already heard a lot from you all. And if you want to pursue this with what staff propose over here, then I believe staff can adjust the budget request over here for 50,000, just because we've just been informed that we have those data, which might be free.
Councilmember Bailey.
I think I'm the river guy here. I greatly appreciate the looking at this. Have you reached out to the Corps of Engineers at all?
We have not yet at this point. And again, that was just a conversation with the levy district at this point, because they do have Armed Corps of Engineers on their board as well. To your answer, I have not talked to any particular member at that board.
I would suspect they may also have some of the data that you would like to see, as well as experience with different uses of their levy, or of levies near their jurisdiction. I would like to see this come back next meeting with maybe a little bit clearer idea of cost. It's something I would be very excited about.
Thank you for that direction.
Councilmember Smith.
So to make sure I'm understanding correctly, we would not be pursuing a grant with this one?
We would not be pursuing a grant for this one this year,
Why not?
because we're already submitting another PSP grant at the same time, even though that was through a partnership with other municipalities. But there is a large portion of the proposal will be falling our city. So it is, to staff's experience, it's rarely multiple PSP would be granted to a community like this.
You don't think they would consider a second request if we were sending the first one in, even as a partnership?
I don't know for sure. There's no such limitation, but just from my past experience, it will be a rare chance, because there's only a certain amount of dollars. And I believe this year, even though they raised a little bit, still close to like $800,000 for the grant money. And there are several municipalities that are interested in that grant, just given the history of it.
Okay, so you're thinking that based on what you know now, we could cut this from 250 down to 50?
From the conversation I had with the levy district, if they do have the data that we budgeted out for.
Okay, and say we did pursue a grant, that could cut it even further?
Normally, a grant would pay up to 80%
Oh,
of
wow.
the cost.
Okay, I would like, what is the time frame on pursuing those grants? Is that coming up very quickly?
Yes. This grant, the deadline will be, I believe, either the end of next week.
Okay, so we can't kick it forward if we push it to next meeting, the grant
I
process
guess I'll
is
have to
fixed.
prepare to drink Town's coffee. I would prefer not to.
Okay, I honestly, I would, if we're cutting out $200,000, we're looking at 50,000 plus potential for 80% of that being paid for by a grant. I say we pursue the grant and approve a $50,000 budget item for it, because let's get this done. Let's look at, we've talked about this for so long. And if
We
there's
can
an
do
opening.
that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say put 50 down, and pursue the grant. If any of that doesn't land, then we just kick it down the road.
I know I harp on this all the time now, but can we pursue other grant opportunities as well? Seems like there's a lot of dollars out there still.
Right.
Yeah.
I have not explored other
Yeah.
grant for this one yet, but I might be
Oh,
able to.
it's
And if you,
Kim
Sorry.
over there.
I have looked at
Nothing.
multiple grant opportunities. Generally speaking, the PSP grant is the best for planning. Multiple other grants that are available in the state as well as federal are more focused on construction. They really don't enjoy paying for planning purposes, which is what makes the PSP grant so unique, is that, again, very few grants will actually come forward just to explore an idea. There are a lot more grants for, I've got a plan, here it is, I just need your funding to make it happen.
Yeah, no, I think that's important to note, because, we talk about a lot of these things, but until you get a plan, you can't put in for any further grants for the larger share, which is construction.
So can we do that? I mean, can we approve an amended item up to $50,000 with a pursuant of the grant? If the grant doesn't land, we wait, figure it
Yeah,
out
just
later?
a budget person here, just for clarity. What we're seeking for is kind of a head nod or thumbs up, and what we would be doing, we would pursue the grant, but you would actually see that funding as part of your proposed fiscal year 2023 budget.
Which happens in
So-
September.
Correct. Correct. We'd begin the budget conversations in August.
I'd go thumbs up for 50 grand, and please pursue the grant if it's,
Will
if the
do.
time's ticking.
Is there a motion there? Are we taking formal direction here?
So move.
Second?
There we go. Okay. Motion, second. Further councilmember discussion. Councilmember Graves.
I'm not in favor of this at this time, I guess. I agree with Saper's comment about incrementalism. You know, I went ahead and moved forward on item 15 with the regional multi-county bike lane, and we're pursuing grants with that. I would rather see this actually just kind of get put on the back burner at the moment and maybe come back to it even a year from now and see where we're at on this multi-county bike lane. I think we got enough on our plate at this time, and so I'm not in favor at this time, I guess.
Further councilmember comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no.
Nope.
No. Motion carries.
Well, thank you for your directions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one quick request. Thank you for the items. Thank you for the discussion. Going forward, could we get the maps with the memo? Because it really helped to see the visual aid.
Yes, I will forward that to you all.
Thank you.
All right, number 17, benefit holiday discussion, and we will call on Casey.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The city has been notified that we have received a Blue Cross Blue Shield Maximum Refund Program reimbursement for calendar year 2021 in the amount of $70,472. In the past, the maximum refund funds received were returned to the city's general fund. Last year, in 2021, with the approval from the City Council, we provided our employees with a benefit holiday in August of 2021. The maximum refund amount reflects funds collected by both city and the employee. Staff would like to recommend that this year the refund be split proportionately between the city and the employees. Staff recommends that the employee's portion of the refund be applied to the employee contribution of the August 2022 insurance payment as a health holiday. The health holiday refund payment would fully cover participating employees' health insurance premiums, allowing employees to retain more of their net pay for both paychecks in August. The balance of the maximum refund reimbursement would be deposited into the originating fund for future health premiums. Staff seeks the City Council's thoughts on this proposed use of the maximum refund program reimbursement for the calendar year of 2021. And I will tell you, employees were very happy last year.
Any thoughts? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Or
Yes.
further councilmember comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Number 18, water treatment plant update, Anthony. Is there another one? I don't know. Oh,
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Number 18 tonight has to do with the water treatment plant project. The water treatment plant upgrade is the largest renovation to the plant since the 1980s, kind of brought about by modernization and kind of the items talked about here tonight for pollution control. Originally, the construction contract allowed for change orders to be approved by the mayor up to $250,000. The project contingency is $1.3 million, 10% of the construction contract. But again, the original contract was set up to originally allow for up to $250,000 mayoral approval. We came to City Council in February to up that to $400,000 as change orders continued as the construction progressed, with the understanding that we would come back again if we reach that limit. The current change order in front of us for the project would put us over that limit. So we're coming back here again to request the authority be moved up to $600,000. And again, if this was to be approved and then advance beyond that, we'd come back again in the future. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I hope you got to quit coming back for this. Councilmember Smith.
So we approved the $13 million budget plus a contingency. I'm curious why we have this functionally mayoral approval if there's a contingency. Like, the whole point of a contingency is to be contingent on increasing project costs. So why are we doing this every time?
So you're actually touching on one of the things that we'll be talking about in future meetings, and that is the city's purchasing policy. it is it could use a little refresh. It doesn't really, it's not modernized to the budgets that you see specifically for a project like that, like this. It's actually one of the items that I know Nick Hawkins and I are looking forward to future conversations with the city council on. The city's purchasing policy is something that we do anticipate bringing forward at a work session, probably not till early of next year, I would imagine. There are certain archaic items within that require us to come forward on items such as this. So that's probably a long way of me saying that that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight.
Okay, can we, by action of the city council, approve up to the total contingent amount?
You do have that flexibility to be able to do so.
I mean, didn't
you
we
would-
approve it as a contingency in the budget? I mean, that's the whole idea, so.
So you did sort of, but we still need, because the way that our purchasing policy is written, the mayor is authorized up to a hard ceiling cap, no matter what the budget amount is. Does this make sense? And that is part of the checks and balances, which is some of the things that when we bring forward a more modernized system of purchasing for the entire city, we would like to talk about what those mechanisms look like. But the way that it is actually written right now is that you could have whatever number you would like in that contingency. It doesn't really matter because after a certain ceiling, we are required to bring it forward for additional permission.
Okay, I would move to.
Is that for us, or are you just talking to her?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So is it okay to move it up to the total contingent amount? I mean, is
I
that
think
something?
we would need a motion and
Yeah.
just to put that out there.
Yeah.
That action is being authorized by you to us.
Okay, I would move that we change the total change order authority to $1,375,425, or 100% of the total approved budget contingency.
Second.
Further council member discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Number 19, downtown streetscape tree update, and we are back with Anthony.
Yeah, back to me. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the downtown streetscape project began in mid-March of this year with the goal, again, of modernizing the streetscape elements, the brick pavers, trees, street lighting, and just kind of street furniture elements. The original intent of the project was to keep as many existing trees as we could. There were 31 trees originally identified that we wanted to keep and remain in place on the project throughout the design. On April 1st, we had an April Fool's joke where one of these trees actually fell and destroyed a Spire truck that happened to be on site. Luckily, no one was hurt. There was no one around the machines and the vehicle that got damaged. But it kind of made us reevaluate the existing trees, and after seeing that one fall, just the kind of level of deterioration we saw underneath that tree when it fell, again, made us kind of want to take another look at this. So we had a ISA certified arborist from the Missouri Department of Conservation come out and reevaluate the trees that we had identified. Interestingly enough, as the season progressed, a good handful of them actually didn't come back anyway from the following year. But the MDOC representative stated that, the trees have reached a certain age that we probably, with the construction of the project, they should be removed because of public safety concerns. Just, again, the falling tree was really the catalyst for looking at these things. So what we'd like to do is amend the project budget by $31,248 to, that's the unit cost for the trees we're adding into the project, and basically replace all the trees in the downtown area with the landscaper approved, the landscape architect approved trees that were going in otherwise.
Now you're getting at number 20. Number 19, any questions on the update? Councilmember Saper.
This sort of begs the question as to why we didn't actually involve the Missouri Department of Conservation in the project in the beginning. And also goes to the fact that in many of our projects, we really don't really fully envision or even consider the environmental impacts of what we're doing, because the project itself is going to be damaging to the trees, apparently. And we should take, we don't do that often enough to actually look at what the consequences of what we're doing in so many ways and the impacts they'll have. And the trees and environment is only one of the ways. And I would like us to really give a lot of healthy emphasis on that going forward.
I don't disagree. I think you could also note 30-plus years ago when they put these trees in, the wells were too small to maintain the trees that are in them anyways.
Well,
which
no,
is
no,
why they're not
that's
having-
why
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
damage.
I get
I'm
it, yeah,
saying
yeah.
In this project, we would have known going in
Earlier that we need to eliminate all
that,
instead of,
that
yeah.
trees will not be salvageable, and so we have to plan on replacing.
Council Member Smith and then Clark.
So given this, it seems obviously necessary that we need to do this. If trees are falling over on trucks and eventually people, we can't mess around. My thought is, so we're putting in new tree wells. They're bigger, but are they significantly bigger where the new trees in 30 years, are the root balls going to be so constrained that they start falling over and now we've just kicked the can down the road? Is there, if we're bringing in the arborist, are they opining on, are there other trees that have more stable root systems or could exist in smaller space with same canopy? What are we doing with that?
So I will say that, street trees just normally don't last as long as a tree planted elsewhere. It's very hard life on a tree. But these trees were specifically picked to be more resilient in that environment. To answer your question about the tree well size, our tree wells now are 5 by 5, where these will actually be 15 feet in length. So they actually were designed to accommodate the trees in a better environment to help them as best they can.
Okay, so a bit of a larger base.
Yes, yeah.
Someday your kids will be up here trying to figure out
There
why
you
in the world
go.
did Dad do this and these trees are falling over.
Yeah.
Further council member discussion, Amy Clark.
You did say arborist, but then you also said landscape architect. I'm a big fan of landscape architect. Was it landscape architect that then approved the final trees? Because that was my question, is how do we know these trees won't face the same demise, which you've partially answered, but, and to also piggyback that I would love to see landscape architects being involved from the get-go at the very beginning for Charette on any projects that will involve the environment at all, which is most everything. So that's my 2 cents again. Thanks.
I'm not sure that requires. No, we are still on number 19, I believe. We have not called 20 yet. But if there's no further discussion at this point, I will move on to number 20, which is the Downtown Streetscape Tree Budget Amendment Resolution number 22045.
Move to approve.
Second.
Further council member discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? No. Motion carries. Item number 21, discussion of rescheduling the city council meeting scheduled for Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022 due to a primary election day. This is Kim's. Although
Good
it's-
evening, Mayor and Council. As kind of written in my little blurb here in Ordinance 9447, you directed staff that any time that there was an election that falls on a regularly scheduled city council meeting to seek guidance. So kind of our question today is, there is an election day and North Kansas City residents will be headed to the polls on August 2nd. Would you like to either postpone, or I guess it's postpone, which means would you like us to move this meeting to August 3rd or cancel the meeting outright?
Council member discussion. Council member Saber.
I would certainly want it to be moved, not canceled. And to me, the 3rd is a suitable change.
Let's do it. August 3rd.
Hold on.
Can I get a motion on that?
No, calm down.
Okay.
One second.
And the other reason why I brought up cancel is in the
Okay, that's good.
ordinance, it
That's
actually
good, we're good.
mentions canceling that
That's
meeting.
why
Yeah.
I specified that.
All right, move the meeting to August 3rd, 2022.
Second.
All right. Further council member discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? No. Motion carries.
Oh my gosh, he's going to let me read one. Okay. Stealing my thunder. Okay. Item 22, approving accounts due and payable by the city through June 3rd, 2022. Bill number 7683, ordinance number 9480.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? No. Motion carries.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through June 3rd, 2022.
I move that Bill number 7683 be placed on second and final.
Oh,
Second?
And passes ordinance number 9480. My brain just went, where are we
I wasn't
now?
sure if I was supposed to do something
No.
else.
Second and final reading. I just lost the word reading. I was like, someone help? Everyone was like, nope,
Oh.
don't know where you are.
And passes ordinance number 9480.
Thanks, friends.
Yeah.
Anna thought I had a stroke. Hang on. Okay, I'm good. Ordinance number 9480.
We got to
All
train
done
someone
there.
else up on this.
Second, for whatever just happened.
That is a second on item number 22, bill number 7683, ordinance number 9480. There's a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Okay, Councilmember Palumbi.
Yes.
Are you sure?
Paying the bills.
Councilmember Graves.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through June 3rd, 2022.
We're really getting to the tough part of the agenda here. Staff comments. That is Michael. Sorry.
Drinking the same water.
Yeah, what's going on around here?
Just in the packet, there's a list of the upcoming city items of note. Also, we have the YMCA report. Just wanted to point out, year-to-date, they're in the positive. It's good. Their attendance is up. But also, we have a report from SHU. We'll pass over.
Apologize.
Is that timer for you or?
I was about to say apologize for me being such a hassle today. But yeah, this is our annual report. It actually is a biannual report because I found out we did not have one back in 2020. So I piled the data together, and it is available online. It will be posted on our website as well. I've already showed some of the volunteers in the Citizen Academy last week, and they questioned me on all of those facts. I'm not going to go through the details, since I'm not ready to bear the questions today. But you're willing to, please feel free to read through. There are some really fun facts about our demographics, what has been changed regarding comparing to the Kansas City metro area. There are also a total number of the permits and inspections that my department has been issued in the past year. And if you're curious about the real estate value that has been gained in the past years that totaled by our permits, those numbers are there as well. And we also have the upcoming projects. I'm just going to scroll down really quick over here. You can get to the detail as well. And we also have the completed developments in the past 2 years. As you know, most of them are falling under that One North area. We do have the A-lofts and the backyard apartments, the Starbucks and the medical office building, as well as Northgate Townhomes that facing Howell Street and the City View apartments. And then we do have some current community development initiatives, including the River Forest Park, which will be further discussed this Thursday. And we have upcoming downtown streetscape that will be completed here in a couple months. And we have the Armour Road Complete Streets. We have Burlington Corridor projects that's still undergoing, East-West Connectivity Study in Town Square, and Howell Street Shared Use Path, which might be coming up in fiscal year 23. And so these are the current and upcoming developments from the private side. The 23rd and Swift, they are starting construction. The Bloom, which has just passed by council, they will be getting ready to go to the TIF Commission for design review very soon. And One North Apartments as well as One North Grocery Store that you all have heard the developer spreading out the news. And then also the last part, which is not the least, our Excel tube expansion and the rabbit hose. You love the rabbit hose by a lot of people, including myself. So these are the exciting projects that community development is really proudly handling. And if you ever have any questions, please let us know, and I'll try my best to answer it.
That was quite quick presentation there. Thank you.
I tried.
Thank you. It looks like Victoria also has something to add this
We also have Arts in the Park Festival this weekend, so I hope you can all come by. It's Friday, 5 to 10 p.m., and then Saturday from 10 to 10.
Look forward to it. Thank you. Further staff comment.
One last one. It'll be a short 45-minute presentation.
You know, there's another old resolution said the presentations are max at 20 minutes. Don't make me.
I'm just kidding. Shoup kind of mentioned it. I just want to put a reminder out there that the City Council and the Parks Board will be coming together in this room on Thursday at 7 p.m. To discuss all things River Forest Park.
Thank you. And Chief Hargis. He said he's going to have a list of things. I knew it. Okay. Michael? Done? All right. We'll move on to council, starting with Councilmember Palumbi this evening.
I don't have a lot. Shoup, good job on your first time. Thanks for bearing with us. I know we can be a little bit overbearing with questions. So thank you for all the information. I know you guys do a lot of background work that sometimes we forget about. So we appreciate everything you do for us. Go to Arts in the Parks. Tomorrow's my birthday. That's all I got.
Thank you, Councilmember Graves.
Yeah, so Victoria's talked about Arts in the Park, as did Palumbi, and I was going to talk about Parks and Recreation. My kids, I just missed my two sons. Both had their first baseball game this evening. Their first game was rained out, so I hope they won. My youngest son was traded to the Red Sox this year. He's been a Cardinal his entire life, and I'm actually happy that he is now a Red Sox. And also, Dag Park is open, and another shout out to Parks and Rec, because we have a tremendous parks department here in North Kansas City, and we have, I think in the last week, my kids have been to Dag Park 3 times. We go about every other day, and it really is a tremendous park. And the other day I was there and met a friend of mine who also graduated from North Kansas City High School, who lives all the way in Parkville, and they came all the way down here to enjoy Dag Park. So come down, check out Arts in the Park. In my opinion, it's the best event we put on here in North Kansas City, and yes, I think it's even better than Snake Saturday. So I hope to see you all down there this weekend.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Saper.
I'd like to second the importance of the parks and what they bring. It serves as a regional kind of attraction. Many years ago, when I was campaigning for another office, I met people in the parks, and it turned out very few of them were actually residents of North Kansas City that I could talk to in terms of an election going on in North Kansas City. We get a lot of people from the region coming to our parks, and it's we tend to involve only the business community and the retail shops and the movie theaters and the bars that attract people to our city, but the parks do too. And in probably a little more sober way. So shout out to the parks.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith.
I want to praise the Public Works Department. You guys have had trees falling on people and water mains exploding, and you've managed to put it all back together without missing a beat. Burlington looks better than it has. Very impressed when I drove by. I expect to see a big hole in the ground, and it looks like fresh pavement. Good work with all that. And then the YMCA, if you're not aware, we have family memberships that are discounted through the city. If you want to come down and see Adam Roberts without sleeves, he is a member. If you want to come swim in the pool, my kids and I go down there fairly often. It's a great facility. Come check it out.
Thank you, Councilmember Bailey.
I had the good fortune of attending Citizens Academy this past week with Shoup, and I got to go through the report at a little bit slower pace. So it is quite detailed, a lot of interesting information in there. I'd highly recommend people go take the chance to learn a little bit more about their community. It's some good infographics, and it's not too bad to get through. So definitely highly recommend that people go ahead and look at that.
Thank you, Councilmember Roberts.
I have nothing. Everyone said all the things to be said. Happy birthday. I'll be the first to say it.
Councilmember Clark.
I think I actually did that in the coffee room. Happy Pride Month. Love your fellow humans, please. Thank you to Chief Freeman. My partner spotted you in your orange shirt supporting gun safety, which was very encouraging. I believe that's why you wore it. Maybe you were wearing it for Pride. You know what? Just claim it for right now. Arts in the Park will be volunteering Friday evening. Come on out. And Saturday day. I'm going to get the clarification from, she's like, you are? I'm looking forward to and grateful for everyone's time as we discuss River Forest Park on Thursday. And I'm going to learn how to read and talk again. I will eat dinner before the next council meeting so I can remember my words. That's it.
That's a tough act to follow, so we're just going to go on to number 26, please.
Okay, consideration of a request to hold and recess into an executive session as requested by the city administrator to be held on this date on collective bargaining matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute 610.0219.
Move to approve.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Palumbi.
Yes.
Councilmember Graves.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Number 27 is being removed. It's no longer needed.
Nice.
With that, the live feed in Channel 2 will be cut off here momentarily. There'll be no further business and no further votes taken this evening. Thank you.